Hey guys, happy Tuesday, Gratitude Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, September 24th, 2019. Super excited to finally, I've been begging him forever and he's just been ignoring me. That's a lie. My friend, my very dear friend, old friend, Shaun Thornton is on. Hey Ash, what's going on? Let us know. You can hear us and see us. Super excited to get his insights. I mean, who doesn't want to hear Shaun's accent during the show, because it's a great one. It's a good Brit one. All right, so we're getting hearts and thumbs up. Hey, Jana Lee Duncan, good to see you guys on the show. Hey, Olga. All right, so we're going to get started. I love it. So Shaun and I have been friends for a long time. Here at the Citrus Club is where we met. He is a super talented business broker, guru. We'll let him talk about that. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Ted. It's good to be here. Hello, everybody.
So give us your origin story. That's where we want to start.
Origin story.
I can see you were going to take over the interview for a second, so give me a second to ask the question.
Okay.
It's fine. There are no rights or wrongs on this. So tell us about you. You're obviously not from Tennessee, so give us a little background on where you're from, how you got to the States, what you were doing.
Sure. So I'm originally from the county of Yorkshire, which is about 200 miles north of Yorkshire. About 200 miles north of London. If you've ever been to the UK,
I have.
Gone through the city of York, we're very proud of the city of York. It's one of the only two, Ted, cities in the UK that still has the medieval walls around. The other one,
cool.
The other one being Chester, absolutely, which is right on the border with.
So is York the same one as like the Duke of York?
Oh, you know, Ted, we could do an hour.
We could do a whole show on that. Sorry,
but it is.
I'm not trying to TMZ you here now. But
let me tell you one quick little bit of history.
Please do.
A little bit of history. So why is New York called New York?
Because of the Duke of York.
Because of the Duke of York. So you know how we have, it's always good when they have, as in fact Charles and Diane had an heir and a spare. You know, that's
an heir and a spare. That's what they call it.
Okay. So, so the second born is normally called the Duke of York. Well, that's already taken with Andrew. So that's why it didn't pass on to Harry yet. But when New York was sold or taken by the British, I think, sold by the Dutch, that was the time of Charles I, Charles, all that stuff, and the brother of the king at that time was the Duke of York. So he named York after, believe it or not,
that was James II, right?
Oh, I tell you what.
I know my history. So James was the Duke of York, and Charles had no legitimate heirs.
Oh.
So he had to, I love British history, he had to pass the throne on. He had tons of illegitimate heirs back in the day, a ton. And so, but he had to pass it on to James II, who with the, I forget what it was called, the Great Revolution or the Great something. James was a Catholic,
That's
and
correct.
they did not want him in. So his daughters, which if you've ever seen that movie, The Favorite, Anne was one of his daughters, Queen Anne. So great history. So I did know that, but it's so cool. So a lot of people don't know the history of why we named things the way we did. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Ted, you never fail to astonish me with the things.
Listen, I know a whole bunch of stuff that you don't need to know to survive, but if you want crazy trivia, bring it on, because I know it. All right, so you were born there, and then what did you want to be? What did you want to do when you grew up?
Well, I wanted to be a footballer, of course, naturally.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's the real football.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes.
He's a soccer player in the United States.
Yes, for years. So, but where I'm from in Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, at that time was you got two choices. You could either go down the coal mines, or into the steel plant. And I didn't fancy going down the mines, so I went into the steel plant.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Yes, I did.
So you went to that's labor. That's hard labor.
Oof, tell me about it. So I was apprentice electrician. I left school at 16 and went into the steel mills. And then I trained as an electrician, finished up going to college as an electrical engineer, and I lived and worked in the steel industry for about 10 years, then left and went to a company that sold equipment to the steel industry.
So how did you make that transition? Because that's interesting. Because it's never too late is the theme, right? Making it happen, making a change. So how did you move? Because that's such a hands-on, blue collar, for lack of a better word. That's you're getting your hands dirty.
It was very much.
You're getting your hands dirty. So how do you make it where you've bumped up, right? So you've realized that you have a talent that you're not utilizing down at the steel mill.
Yeah, that's right. But it was an engineering company, and I felt as an engineer that I wanted to actually, be out there sort of engineering. But in fact, I really wasn't that good at it, Ted. So somebody spotted that I might be okay in sales.
Isn't that funny how somebody realizes that?
Absolutely.
Well, because you've never met a stranger. That's one thing about Shaun. Like when he's here, especially at the Citrus Club or any interactions, you'll interact with anybody.
Try to. Just like
And that's a natural, well, of course. Well, it's natural sales. Like you're born with that. You can't. It's very hard to learn that.
Yeah, I was a bit lucky. Somebody said, I think you'd be okay in sales, and I realized at that time I wasn't a very good engineer. So and then they switched me over to the States in the early 80s to Worcester, Massachusetts.
All right, so another British name, right? I mean, basically.
Yeah.
So you came to the States. So what was that like? Since you're from there, did you have any family or friends here?
Well, of course, my wife and two very small children. We had a 3- and a 5-year-old then, and we transferred over. The company looked after us very well. Worcester, Mass, nice place, and of course, lots of British connections there.
Sure.
So we felt somewhat at home. And
did you know anyone here other than your coworkers?
Co-workers only.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was that like making the transition? Because I think a lot of people think of expats, right? You come over here and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to acclimate. I'm not sure Americans are so good at that, just for the record. We're a little more demanding than our European family counterparts. So you come here and you're still in the same industry, but it's a totally different culture.
Well, yeah, but again, what we found and what we've always found, and I'm not just saying this, is that Americans are so friendly and so nice and so welcoming, and but particularly I have to say, particularly Brits in New England, we were really welcomed, and we had a great time there. We lived there for 3 years. I travelled extensively.
Is this in Pittsburgh? No,
Worcester.
Oh, Worcester. Wait, there's somewhere else that you were before you.
Oh, Worcester, and then Pittsburgh.
Then Pittsburgh. Okay.
So we did 3 years Worcester, and then transferred to Pittsburgh, a bit reluctantly initially, but then.
What are you selling at this point?
Equipment to the steel industry, and ready for this, aluminum, not aluminium, aluminum industry.
So real aluminum.
Aluminum. So Alcoa, Alcan, Kaiser, Reynolds, U.S. Steel, Bethlehem Steel, many of which have National Steel, National Aluminum.
So you're traveling in the areas where that is a big industry. That's supporting local industry.
What happened? My boss said to me, "Look," he said, "we've got to get out there." So he just joined the company. He was an experienced sales guy. And he said, look, we've got to get out there. We've got to tell the people all about our company, because we were sort of fledgling into the States at that time. And he literally took a map of the United States and drew a line down the middle. And he said, you're on the east and I'm on the west, go. And that was it, literally.
So you traveled everywhere. That was...
So here's the story, right? In the 1980s, I used to count my flights. I don't know if I tell you this, but in the 1980s, I used to count my flights. No spreadsheets then, actually. And
there was no such thing as Excel, guys.
Excel, no, even Lotus hadn't come along. And so I used to count my flights, and I stopped counting at 10,000 flights.
Wow.
I swear to you.
So you were all over the East Coast, and where did it divide? Like right in the middle?
Well, he drew a line down to Ohio, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
By contracts, really, more than anything else, and that was it. He said go, and so we did okay. You
did amazing. Ahmed says hi. Still got to get out and try Makani, by the way. Right, Makani. I said it right. Ahmed, correct me if I'm wrong. New Egyptian restaurant in town. It's supposed to be amazing. Okay. All right, so then, but we're talking about making a change never too late. So you eventually, you did that industry for how long?
31.
30. He was a baby when he started.
Years, yeah.
But then you make a change. You moved to Florida.
Well, so we were in Pittsburgh, and
Look who says it. Hi, Dad. That's for you.
Oh, you're joking. Oh, look at that.
Look at that.
Gem.
What's up, Gemma?
Oh, my goodness me. So Gemma, both our daughters and 4 grandchildren live in the UK.
That's hard.
Gemma is, she works in, like Wall Street here. In the UK, it's called The City. You know that?
I did not know that.
It's called The City. It's traditionally, it's always been around St. Paul's. That's the City of London, known as the Square Mile. They've got other areas as well, of course. And
she says this is bizarre, right? Seeing Dad on Facebook Live, it's crazy.
That's right. So what time is it now?
Well, shout out to you. Yeah, it's got to be 7 o'clock-ish.
Ish. Absolutely.
I love it.
And our other daughter, Sarah, she works for the BBC. She's a presenter with the BBC.
Wonderful.
So they're doing well.
But they miss the grandkids and they want you to move here.
She does that all the time to me. She does that all the time.
I love it.
Yeah. She's just been here to see it.
So you finally make a move here, right? So
the steel industry tends to either spend money like drunken sailors or be absolutely bereft. And
there's no in between.
There's no in between. So it was on one of its bereft patches, and I was running a company up in Cleveland at that time, and unfortunately the times were so we got closed down, and a good company looked after me, but some good people lost their occupation, sadly. So I said, and it was the corporate world as well, I said, there's got to be something else. And a friend of mine was a business broker, and he said, why do you think about that? So I said, what is that? What is a business broker?
What does that even mean?
So I moved down here. I was fortunate enough to.
Was your friend already here, and that's where the business was? All right. So why the move here? Like, what was the impetus to get you in Orlando?
Let's look out the window.
Well, I mean, seriously, they can't see it, but you guys know.
Yeah.
We're on the 18th floor. It's gorgeous.
Pittsburgh's a really nice place. Both our daughters were brought up there. The education system's very, very good. But in the winter, it tends to be a little bit dull and dismal. It's a really nice place. I mean, it is a lovely city. I don't think many people know how lovely it is, but it tends to be a little bit overcast and dull and dismal.
So this was sunshine for you.
It really was.
But did you know anyone here when you came? This is the thing I want to encourage people. So when you want to make the leap, and we're going to get more in depth in Shaun's story, but when you want to make the leap, if it's the right thing for you to do, you can do it without knowing anyone there. I mean, if it's the right thing for you to do, for you, your family, for whatever your goals are, I think it's super important to realize that you can do it, and it's not as scary as you think it is.
That's very true. And actually, we met some very good friends right here in this club.
Of course, right?
And we traveled throughout the world with them. Yeah.
Really Gemma says he basically couldn't work a snowblower. You're awesome. Yes. I need you to come on the show next time you're here, Gemma.
Yeah,
I think I've met her. I know I've met your grandchildren.
Yeah, you've met
when they've been here.
You've met. I think you may have met Sarah, our other daughter.
It's just couldn't work the snowblower. That's for another. So you're here in Florida. Hey, what's up, Tyler?
Never give me a break.
So business broker, though, that's completely different than selling equipment for the steel industry.
Yeah, it's business. It's numbers. It's selling. It's very much the same. But I was fortunate enough to become part of a company called Murphy Business, which is headquartered over in Clearwater, and they were and have been right to this day very, very helpful.
And is that where you literally started, and you are still there?
I started with Murphy.
How many years are we at?
It's in January. It'll be 16.
So talk about what that's like, because I don't think a lot of people know what a business broker is.
Yeah, well, first of all, to be a business broker in Florida, you have to have a real estate license.
Did you hear that? So you have to be licensed as a real estate agent.
Licensed as a real estate agent. So that's the first thing. Without that, you can't do a thing. And I did that and subsequently got a broker's license. Although I don't particularly need it, but I got it. Yeah, you just have to get yourself known.
But what does that mean? What does it mean to be a business broker?
Beer, okay.
What do you do? So tell them, because I think they think business broker, nobody really, unless you are in the market to buy or sell a business entity, a business, you wouldn't necessarily know what Shaun Thornton does. So tell them what that means.
Well, I think where does it start? Does it start with a buyer or seller? Let's start with a seller. So somebody comes to the conclusion, the moment has come for them to sell a business. By retire because there's ill health and there's just tactical reasons. Now is the moment. I'd like to go on and do something else.
It's their time.
So you would then contact me or somebody like me, and then you talk about it. What are the things that you need to concentrate on? There are many times when I say to people, it's not ready for sale at the moment, because you have to be prepared financially, you have to be prepared in terms of people. One of the major questions that somebody will ask is, what happens when you walk out the door? And that is something you have to have thought through very carefully.
When you walk, so as a seller, what you're saying is, as a seller, what happens when you walk out the door?
Well, when a buyer comes along and says to the seller, okay, I'm interested in your business, da-da-da-da-da. Well, there's a lot of da-da-da-da-da, but the final question is, what happens when you, seller, walk out the door? How am I going to take on your role? So you've got to have got that thought through very, very carefully.
Correct, because I think I've done a lot of buy-sell. So I think a lot of the issue is the buyer truly ready to, like, they may have a concept. Let's say I have I don't know, we'll use me as an example, a wine shop, right? And for whatever reason, I've drank all the inventory and now it's time for me to sell. The person walking in may have a dream to own a wine shop, a wine bar, but they only have the dream. They don't have the reality of what goes on. They don't understand the bills that need to be paid, the ordering, the inventory, how you keep track of it, how you use your online presence. They may only have the idea that it's a good idea, but really have no idea what happens.
Yeah, and it's very complicated. So my job is to try to, for each different kind of business, is to try to put an illustration together what it's all about. My philosophy personally is to get things out on the table so that when somebody walks in, they can see the whole of the business, and that's the financials, of course, but all the other elements, who the people are, what the individual seller does. All of those things have to be. So get them out on the table, important. Because if you don't, it'll come out eventually.
Well,
so
that's the thing.
You might as well do
it's the same on the mortgage side. I think what happens is, so you're divulging all of this stuff. It's probably the first time you've ever shared your tax returns with someone, ever shared your bank account information with someone. And so it's a daunting task. And then you have to feel comfortable with a Shaun in order to do that, but it's still very unnerving. But if you don't get it all out up front, I've been through this. Listen, I suffered. I did it one time. I did a transaction, and I was just listening to them, and I wasn't listening. They had a broker that represented them. This is like 15 years ago. They had a broker that represented them, and I wasn't really paying attention until I had to get my attorney involved. I should have paid attention. I should have encouraged them to be 100% upfront. And they weren't. And the problem is, you don't want it to come last minute, because Shaun's done all this work, you've done all this work, you've already probably, as a seller, spent that money and you're going to a vacation and wherever, right? Be careful. And then all of a sudden, you got to pull back because something wasn't disclosed, something wasn't done properly. So I want to encourage you guys, when you want to, well, obviously you want to work with Shaun, but when you want to buy a business, invest in a business, sell a business, want to get involved in that, make sure you're 100% ready to divulge everything that you absolutely have. How could you not? You got to trust him.
Let me give you a little statistic.
Tell me a stat.
So if you consider somebody who's going to buy real estate, residential real estate, and they're working with a realtor, it is said that when they're working with a realtor, within 12 months, 80% of those people will have bought a piece of residential real estate. In our business, start to work with a business broker. I'm a buyer, I'm interested in buying a business. 90% of those people will never buy a business.
Which sounds like it's a depressing statistic, but in my opinion, good. Why? Because he's weeded out the people. Because what do we don't want somebody in 12 months coming back to him and saying, you sold me a terrible business, or you didn't tell me anything, or they've gone bankrupt and they didn't know how to manage it because there was no vetting process. Shaun is so good about talking through. I listen to him at meetings, right? And I don't know all the details, obviously, but I listen. And he's kind of like the hardcore dad, right? So Gemma can probably speak to that. He's got to be. Why? Because he's really looking out for everybody in the transaction. And if you're not being vulnerable and you're not sharing absolutely everything that would make a difference in the transaction, then you're not doing anybody good.
No late breaking surprises.
Yet we don't like news. There's no newsies here. You want to know what's going on. So tell me what's going on in the market. I want to talk about the market a little bit.
Well,
so,
just to finalize that,
yes, please.
What we want is a happy seller and a happy buyer. That's what they want.
But
remember one thing. Buying and selling businesses is not a two-legged stool; it's a three-legged stool. So it's the seller, it's the buyer, and it's the banker. So we need to have. We use the wonderful, thank you very much, SBA 7A program. My goodness, we use it all the time. It's very, very good. So we pre-qualify businesses for prior to. That's one of the things that I always do.
Well, you have to, right?
Yeah.
Pre-qualify. It's kind of like on us. We want a pre-approval. We want to make sure that we know enough to say, you can afford this and you can handle the transition and owning it.
Absolutely.
Because it's not just, oh my God, I want to own a wine shop. If you don't know, let's say you don't have a laptop. I mean, there's so many things that go into what's going on. All right, so I want to talk about the market a little bit because I'm fascinated and I don't know the answer.
Okay.
So what are big businesses that are selling? What are people buying? What are people selling? What's going on in the market of buying and selling businesses, right?
Okay, so think about this. But people always talk about there are investors out there. Well, okay, there's really two types of buyer. There's a million types of buyer. But let's try and make it simple. There's people who are going to buy a business to buy themselves a job.
Right.
So they're taking the place of the current business owner. And then there are going up the ladder, the private equity groups and institutional investors, and they are the real investors, but they're generally buying higher end, but more expensive businesses. It's difficult to actually easily categorize that, but more expensive businesses. So that's the M&A, the mergers and acquisition market. So those are, generally speaking, business brokers. We're dealing with what we call the Main Street businesses, and those generally are people who are buying themselves a job. So there.
Like, give an example. What does that mean? Like somebody who's buying themselves a restaurant.
A restaurant. As you know, the vast majority, the highest percentages of small businesses that are sold or bought are restaurants.
Which is a completely different animal than. That's the thing I want you to understand. So Shaun has to know lots of industries, even though there's a lot of similarities. Restaurant is different than florist. Restaurant is different. Like, so you have to know it's got a whole different depth. There's a different level there, and you have to be familiar, like he is.
Well, I think one of the things it varies from business to business to business to business. But what's the lease? What is the lease look like? How long's the lease been in place? Is it assumable? Let's talk about the employees. How many employees are there? How long have they been there? How experienced are they? What's the turnover in employees? Obviously, we look at the numbers all the time. In restaurants, what's the cost of goods that you're running? Because there are industry standards that you can look at for cost of goods percentages. A very it's really, really important, and a seller really has to have all that stuff at their fingertips. I was with a buyer-seller meeting this morning on one of the businesses I have listed for sale, and the really shrewd, very smart buyer asking questions of the seller, and the seller is fantastic. He answers question after question after percentage. He knows his business.
He knew his business.
Knows his business.
A lot of people don't, right? So a lot of restaurateurs are great chefs or great menu planners, but not necessarily great business people. I'm not picking on that particular industry, but that's an industry I know is super popular.
One of the things where restaurants are concerned is how many hours a day will the restaurant be open? Who will it be that's running it? Is it you and your spouse who's going to be running it? How do you feel about a manager coming in? All those things have got to be thought through.
Sure.
Because there's a padlock, there's a chain in a padlock, and you're going to be chained to it, and it's your livelihood and income. So we need to get all that stuff out on the table.
And how does it work? So tell me, is that your primary, like, what are big booming businesses that you're getting inquiries from or you're working on? Is it restaurants are big? Is it medical? Like, tell us what's kind of going on in the market.
There is a medical market right now.
Yeah.
There are a lot of medical businesses that are selling. I personally don't have one at the moment, but there are quite a few out there. But what I look for, Ted, I look very carefully at the numbers. Can we substantiate the numbers? What's the? I look at the owner of the business, and I'm very keen on making sure that I understand that they understand what this is not this is not flighty. We're doing this, and this is your new job, by the way.
Right. Hello. It's your new job, and guess what?
And I'm here to help.
You're the boss, the toilet cleaner.
No, I'm talking about the seller.
Oh, the seller.
Oh,
that's right. That's right.
The seller's got a new job to sell the business, and I'm here to help, of course, and I'll guide you and help you. But you're going to have to put some effort in, and it will take a little bit of time away from the running of the business. So it's very important to understand.
And what does somebody do? Like, let's say, well, I'll use the wine shop because that's my favorite.
Okay.
So what does somebody do? Let's say they come to you and they say, all right, Shaun, I know there's got to be wine bars and wine shops for sale. Mm-hmm. There's got to be something that I can.
Yeah.
I want to get into that business.
Yeah.
I'm basically going to buy my employment.
Yeah.
What do they have to bring to you before you'll even begin negotiating with a seller?
Well, it's so if it's a buyer who's coming in to buy a business of any kind, well, that's a good example. My job is to qualify that buyer so that when I go to the seller, and we have in Florida we've got an overarching organization called Business Brokers of Florida. So that's an MLS, which is quite unique in the country. There are very few.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yes,
that.
we do.
That's
BBF,
so cool.
Business Brokers of Florida, BBF MLS.
So that's the business MLS, basically.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Very cool.
Yeah, so people can look on there and look at businesses for sale, and so it's important that, let's say I'm representing a buyer. So when I go to, let's say I'm going to co-broke this with there's another broker who has the business listed for sale. It's very important that I can look him in the eye and say, yes, I have qualified this buyer.
Correct. This
buyer is really interested in buying a business. They have the reasons A, B, and C, and I've asked for them to disclose to me and to me alone their financials, which I do, and then I can look the other broker in the eye or look the seller in the eye and say, yes, this buyer. Now, there's nothing guaranteed. As I say, we won't forget that 10.
No, but what you've done, you've vetted them.
Mm-hmm.
You have really gone through and done your homework, because what happens, you think you can afford a business.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're on the buyer side,
mm-hmm.
and you can't,
mm-hmm.
Or you don't have the resources in the right place. There's so many things that can go crazy with, I mean, think about it. Residential is the same way.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that can go crazy with the transaction. And so you have to make sure you have somebody who is helping you figure it out, because I'm not built like the way Shaun thinks, because he's got all this experience, these many years. 14, are we 14? What are we in?
Almost 16.
16 years. And so he knows what to look for. If I'm trying to sell or buy, I don't know what to look for. I just know I have an idea, or I know I want to get out. And then I have to figure out how that looks. And am I ready to get out, or am I ready to buy?
Yeah, let me just say one other thing to you as well, which is very different to real estate. So, because somebody comes along, makes an offer, and the way that we do things here, we have a standard asset sale and purchase agreement here in Florida, which we use. And they offer, put some money into escrow, and then, of course, the document says that it's time for due diligence. Now, due diligence can be, it's financial due diligence, but it's really not. It's many other things as well.
It hurts.
So
sometimes it's super painful.
How can a deal fall apart? Well, that's when a deal can fall apart, in due diligence. So if you are buying real estate, what can go wrong once you go under contract. Well, what could go wrong is that the financing could fall through. But generally speaking, you've got that all pre-approved.
Appraisal.
Appraisal. That might be out of whack. That's for sure.
Right.
But not so much. And the home inspection might. So I would suggest to you that once under contract, a huge percentage are going to go through to closing. Not so much in our business, but that's when things come out of the woodwork, and this is why you've got to be careful and make sure that a minimum amount of stuff, it's all been thought through. But I would suggest that under contract, probably 50% of them don't.
Wow. So that's the thing I think people need to understand. It's not that easy. Like, we always encourage you guys to take a leap. It's never too late. If you've got a business that you want to get into, you want to buy your employment, I love that. But whatever your passion is, you have to have the backing. Like, you have to figure out what that looks like. And even though it's, unfortunately for Shaun, or maybe fortunately, he's kind of like the guidance counselor, the mom, the dad, he's grandpa, grandma, I mean, he's everything in the relationship. But he has to be. Why? Because he's not only protecting himself, but he's really looking out for you on the buy-sell side. He's got to, because his reputation is super important. All right, tell me anything crazy. What are some of the crazier, if you're allowed to, businesses? Have you ever had anybody ask you for a business and you're like, I gotta think about this for a second? Or have you ever done a transaction that involves a business that people wouldn't normally think of? What I want to do is encourage them. I use wine shop, we talked about restaurant, but it could be anything that is a business.
Yeah, I mean,
have you had crazy ones?
Well, yeah, maybe I shouldn't tell you this.
Oh, you shouldn't? I don't know. As long as it doesn't identify anyone, Shaun.
Maybe not. Maybe I won't tell you that one.
Well, give me a. I think what I want people to come away from is, let's say they're not into anything we've discussed, but they want to buy, I don't know, a horse chariot business.
Yeah, I mean, boogie whips. We tend not to think that there's too.
What's a boogie whip?
Buggy.
Oh, a buggy whip.
That's my Yorkshire accent there.
A buggy whip. Is that a horse and carriage?
That was the thing.
Yes.
In the 19th century, buggy whip business is gone.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't buy a buggy whip.
Don't buy. But I think there must be different things out there, like especially in this day and age where everybody is, everything's online, right? So everybody is doing some sort of Etsy, Amazon. There's all these different eBay. Yeah. There's all these different types of businesses.
Well, here's my favorite business. Okay.
Tell us.
There's no lease. There's no employees.
Right. Guess what?
No lease.
Tell them why that's important.
Well,
why is that your favorite?
Well, because if you don't have a lease, then you're not beholden to a landlord. Sorry to landlords who are listening, but you're not.
Right.
So if it's home based, then you don't. And of course, when you sign a lease, you would know this. When you sign a lease, you've got it. Come what may with the business.
Oh my God, I hate leases. I really do. I love my commercial real estate friends, but I hate the word CAM. I hate net or whatever the thing is. Oh my God, it's insane. So that's one thing. So how's about a business with no employees? How's about a business with no employees? I like that too. Why do I like that? Well, there's a reason I would like it and I wouldn't. Why would I like it? I'm not bringing on, and not to give other employees a problem, but from a buyer's perspective, their baggage. You can look at it that way, or you can look at it as somebody who knows the intricacies of the business and can help you. So it really depends on the employee at that point, and then how deep are you going to get involved. When I bought one of my businesses, I bought 3 offices, and I bought it and I kept the employees on until I could figure out how that worked.
Okay.
It was a painful process, honestly, because they all were used to a different way of doing business than I did business. And so you have to be really careful about that. I didn't have a business broker do that with me. I did it all on my own. Well, me and my attorney. But my attorney's not the same. You having a business broker, why is that important? Because they know they know what to ask for. The attorney knows what the document looks like that is not telling you the meat of the business, the meat and bones, heart and soul of the business, and you have to have somebody Shaun, like Shaun, to help you with that?
Yeah, we use standard documents here wherever possible, but I have negotiated contracts in Russia, Brazil, South Africa, Korea, Australia. Shall I stop? And of course,
no, I love it.
The United States. So I've done a lot of contract negotiation in my time. Yeah.
All right, so listen, we're late, of course, because we had to talk. We had a lot to talk about. We're going to share all of Shaun's contact information. If you're interested in buying or selling your agency, your office, your business, whatever it is, you got to reach out to Shaun. But we'll share all of that, and so will Shaun. So we like to talk about mentors on the show. So give a shout out to a mentor or two, somebody who made a difference in your life, who helped you. Obviously, all I can think about is the person who said, hey, you might be good at sales, right? These are the mentors that people don't think about that change your life. So anybody that you want to give a shout out to?
Well, I think my boss, who I'm still good friends with, who did the line down the middle of the States, he taught me how to sell, really, door knocking, selling. I have a very good friend in the UK who unfortunately was hit by a stroke 25 years ago, and he's an example. He is Terry. If anybody knows Terry, I tell him he's a marvelous man. His attitude towards life has never changed, although he's been somewhat debilitated. Let me just tell you about Pat Pierce. Can I tell you about Pat Pierce of Dreamflight?
Sure. Oh, yes, we have to talk about that. See? Yes, all right. I said it 4 times, and I still forgot to bring it up.
Got time to do that?
We have time. It's your show. Let's do it.
This is very near and dear to my heart.
What is Dreamflight?
So Dreamflight is an organization that we're just about to do year number 33.
Wow.
So Pat Pierce started this. She was a cabin service director with British Airways, and she decided to bring a number of seriously ill and disabled children to Orlando, Florida for the holiday of a lifetime. That was number 1, and it was going to be 1, and then it became 2, and then and now we're just about to do number 33. So we bring 192 seriously ill and disabled children from the UK. Wow. The great thing is, if you want an example of a hands across the sea, this is an example of hands across the sea. So they come on a chartered jumbo 747, British Airways. They come into the Orlando International Airport. With them, they bring a whole host of escorts, all of them who are volunteers. Every single last one is volunteers. To be greeted here, so they're here for a week. So we have a number of volunteers who stay with the children for a week. We have about 50 of those, Americans who give up their vacation. Hard-won vacation, of course. A week's a lot in the States, and perhaps less so in the UK. But so we feel very, very, very strongly that how wonderfully they operate. So they stay with the children. The children get off the plane. We go out they allow us out to the airfield. The children come down the steps, and some are carried, some are assisted down the steps.
It's amazing.
And some walk down the steps. And then weekly volunteers, they come with us, and so we have about 50 of those, and they stay for the full week. They can't go anywhere else, literally at the hotel and at the parks, and that's it. And then we have daily volunteers. We have about 80 of those, and my job is to organise those throughout the week. So people come for a day or 2 days or a little bit more. And they come in the morning at 7:30, and then they leave when we get back from the parks at around 6 o'clock. It's great. It's wonderful. And so the lady who started this patch, she's here every year.
We gotta give a shout out to Pat Pierce.
Pat Pierce, yes,
I
love that.
Wonderful
lady.
You know, I didn't tag Dreamflight in the post, but I will go back and do that. I'm sure there's a page, and then
dreamflightUSA.net.
When you share the show, which I know you will, we will put that in there for sure.
Okay.
All right, so you've been a joy. Thank you guys for hanging with us for 40 minutes instead of 30.
Where did that go?
Oh, it goes fast. Listen, when you have an interesting topic, it goes fast. So thanks for being on the show. Appreciate you, all you do. Dreamflight's an amazing organization, get involved, reach out to Shaun. You want to buy or sell a business. Who else are you going to ask for? You're going to ask for Shaun Thornton. Thanks for being on, buddy.
Ted,
we love you guys.
great to see you.
Mwah. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye, everybody.